What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Dirty Bird Fly Through. We have a lot to talk about in this one, but before we do get started, please remember to like, subscribe, share the video out, support the channel any way you can. It is always greatly appreciated. And, you know, there's some Mondays that we come on here and obviously we get to talk about a win. And obviously, it's exciting whenever you get to do that. There's some Mondays you get to come on here. You got to talk about a loss. You got to look at what went wrong, some of the bright spots that went right, and then, where do you go from there? But then, and this is pretty rare, but then there are some Mondays that you have to come on here and you have to face a very harsh reality of what happened to your team. And that's what we're having to do today. We're having to come on and we're having to face the harsh reality of what happened to the Atlanta Falcons in Charlotte yesterday, which was an absolute mauling by the Carolina Panthers. And, I think that the simple question, that you would ask, just not even so much about the Panthers winning, but when you just see the final score 30 to nothing, is what the hell actually happened? How did the Atlanta Falcons lose this game? And to put it pretty simply, the Atlanta Falcons never even really went into this game, it looked like, wanting to win. They did not play to win this game. Let's be very clear. They absolutely sucked all day. They played sloppy football. They did not look prepared. It did not look like there was really any preparation for this game. That's how bad it actually was. So, I really was questioning how I was going to approach this. But I do want to first and foremost, because I do think that they deserve it, I'm going to give the Panthers the credit. Because Carolina obviously came into this game basically with their season on the line. If Carolina were to have lost and went to 0-3 yesterday, their season essentially would have been over. And Bryce Young and how that team had done the first couple weeks, it was once again kind of like a similar situation as to last year of really where is this Panthers team going would have been the big question. But they came out and you saw a defense that took advantage of the mistakes Atlanta made. You saw a Carolina offense come out. And while the offense didn't look pretty, it didn't look like an explosive offense, they got the job done. You saw them be able to establish a run very well. And Bryce Young, it really felt like was comfortable. He was in his element. Carolina did not put this game on him, did not ask him to go win this game. They just asked him to manage this game. Dave Canales came out with an exceptional game plan that was able to reel the Panthers to a dominating victory. So, congratulations to the Carolina Panthers fans on their Super Bowl, because we know that there's no better feeling in the world for them than beating the Atlanta Falcons. So, congratulations to the Carolina Panthers. Now, as far as how I want to approach this recap, there's a lot of ways I could have came out and done it. But I'm gonna actually do something that I really was hoping I did not have to do a whole lot. But, it's going to be something, it's going to be a first. Hopefully, I do not have to do it a whole lot. Hopefully, this is the only time I have to do it. But I'm going to call it an accountability roundtable. And this is going to happen when the team plays so bad that you got to gather everyone around and you just got to start holding people accountable. The people that were most at blame for this loss, for this massacre yesterday, to account. And that's what we're going to do. And we're going to start off with our head coach. We're going to start off with Raheem Morris, because This is the guy it starts with. This is the guy that's in charge of everything. This is the guy that is supposed to make sure the team comes out, is supposed to make sure the coaching staff has the game plan in place, the players are prepared. And Raheem Morris did not do that. We saw Raheem Morris pretty much all day yesterday as the Falcons were getting beat down and the score was getting higher and higher for Carolina and the deficit was growing larger. A guy who just, he did not look like he knew what to do. And this is not a first time thing with Raheem Morris either. We saw it a lot last year when this team was in similar situations where Raheem Morris, he was just standing there like a clueless idiot on the sideline. And for a guy who is in his second stint as an NFL head coach, who, we heard all this praise about coming in about how experienced he was and how much he deserves a shot. Raheem Morris has gotten a shot, and so far, you're talking about a team that has a 9-11 record under him, and you've had several games that you have lost that you easily should have won. And this is the issue. It doesn't matter how many upsets you pull off. If you cannot beat the teams that you're supposed to beat, you're not going to be worth anything. It doesn't matter, how many games you pull off like you did versus Philadelphia last year or even versus Minnesota last Sunday night. If you cannot beat the Panthers, and not just you can't beat the Panthers, but if you get absolutely humiliated by them, this is the result. This is what you're going to get. A underwhelming experience that leads to a team that is missing the playoffs. So we got to hold Raheem Morris accountable. And you can say all you want, oh, how much Raheem Morris, what change is he going to make? At the end of the day, until Raheem Morris actually starts to realize how real this is, until he realizes that you have to take care of business and you have to have a killer instinct as a coach. And for as much as you can give Raheem credit for getting rid of Jimmy Lake and getting rid of Koo, and we'll talk about the kicking situation in a minute. We are still seeing a lot of the same mistakes being made. And as long as those remain in place, you're going to continue seeing issues with this team. And you would love to come out and say these issues are going to be fixed. It's still early in the season. I understand that. But as long as you have a head coach who is as stubborn as Raheem Morris, I will say that. Raheem Morris is a stubborn prick. I'm just going to call it for what it is. He is not willing to change anything, and as long as that remains in place, as long as Raheem continues with his stubborn ways, you're going to continue to see a team that is inconsistent in their performances from week to week, and a team that you really don't know what to expect anything out of. This Falcons team is not a bad team. This could be a roster you get to the playoffs with. And the issue with Raheem Morris is that he's not taking the steps necessary, and he's not going the extra mile to ensure that the Falcons get to where they need to be for him to be able to keep his job. So, in the end, it is a really, really, tough cut to deal with that a performance like today brings on, and the reflection that it brings on that you have to do the day after a loss. But you just got to realize that until Raheem Morris is willing to actually stand up, be the head coach, and not be somebody's friend. I mean, I will say it, the photo of him going and dapping and smiling just as, the game ends, and trying to dap players from the opposing team up after you just got shut out by 30. And I said a lot about Dan Quinn when he was here. Gave Dan Quinn a lot of, um, did not cut him slack. I held him accountable, but Dan Quinn looks like Coach Carter compared to Raheem Morris in a lot of circumstances. And it's frustrating. It is. Because great coaches, yes, you can be a player's coach, but you got to hold your guys accountable. And until Raheem Morris actually starts to hold guys accountable, stops the smiling, whenever, no matter what happens. Sometimes you just got to put your head down and go to work. You can't be smiling and dapping people up because that shows me that you are not focused. So until you get that vibe, it doesn't necessarily matter if you're going to win the next game or not. You could win a game you're not supposed to win, but you got to beat the teams you're supposed to beat at the end of the day. So in the end, you got to hold Raheem Morris accountable. Now, the next guy we're going to hold accountable is Zach Robinson. And it almost feels like Zach Robinson, he's getting his own specific segment each and every preview, each and every recap. Zach Robinson's offense has been figured out. We know what he's going to do. We know that he lives and dies by the pistol formation, literally. It is, at this point, it's not even funny because you truly are limiting what you can do as a offense as long as you continue to stick with the pistol. And yesterday, I think we saw how bad it really got because even last year under Kirk Cousins, we did see some shotgun mixed in. We would see every now and then the Falcons go under center. But this year, you could probably count on one hand, and by the amount of fingers you have on one hand, how many times the Falcons have actually ran a play just under center this year. And even yesterday, it only felt like the Falcons ran a handful of plays out of shotgun. They are living and dying by the pistol formation. And if you do not have the versatility to open up your offense, if you do not have creativity and you center your offense around one guy, these are the issues you're going to run into as a offense. This is why your offense is not reaching its potential. This is why you scored a 0 on the board. You scored a circle. You scored a donut on the board because your offense is inept. It's anemic. And for as much as we talked about the offense under Arthur Smith and under Dave Ragone, this offense is about in line with that. Because you are literally living and dying by the same 4-5 formations every single game. Teams have figured you out. And honestly, they know at this point, look, we cannot stop Bijan. We know Bijan is going to get his. But as long as we are able to limit Bijan from those big house calls. And I love Bijan, but at the end of the day, Bijan gets you first downs. He doesn't get you touchdowns. You need to spread this ball out if you want to get in the end zone. You have not had a wide receiver or a tight end to score a touchdown so far this season in your 3 games in. And that is a problem. It's an absolute problem that you are faced with. So Zach Robinson absolutely is getting held accountable. And if it keeps up, Zach Robinson will not have a job much longer. Now, the next guy going to hold accountable is the quarterback. It's Michael Penix. Now, for as much blame I have put on Raheem, much blame I've put on Zach Robinson, Michael Penix is not escaping blame. Michael Penix yesterday had his welcome to the NFL reality check type game. It is a game that most every young quarterback has. Josh Allen had it. Lamar Jackson had it. Hell, Patrick Mahomes had it in the Super Bowl versus Tampa Bay. So, this was bound to happen. But even though I think you can put a lot of what you see with Michael Penix and really why he isn't reaching his ceiling as to where he could be as a quarterback, due to the fact that it really feels like Zach Robinson has neutered this offense down to the very basics. When we saw for 3 games at the end of last year, when it felt like this offense was flowing and it gave us hope. We saw Michael Penix being able to sling the ball loose. We saw Drake London getting involved. We saw Bijan getting involved. We saw everybody getting involved and making plays. And now you cannot just let this be the Bijan show, because teams are going to figure out that if it is the Bijan show and no one else is getting involved, that is the way to shut the offense down. And that is what is going to lead to results like you saw yesterday. However, for Michael Penix, the number one thing I think for him is going through your reads, because the pick six that he threw was just the fact that he did not go through his reads. He didn't. Now, at the same time, that is where I go back to accountability for Zach Robinson, because now you're training your young quarterback to think, I got to look for Bijan on every play. That is the safest option. However, you have to go through your reads. You also have to make those throws. You have to be on time with them. There was, after he threw the pick six, there was another point in time where he had pretty good O-line protection on a 4th down, and he was just late getting the ball to Ray McCloud. And, that, killed literally any hope that could have been left for the Falcons. You saw some very bad misses. You saw a bad miss to Drake London. It felt like on a play, one of the few play actions that they ran. There were some bad misses for Michael Penix yesterday, and I'm really interested in Michael Penix, more so than the bad performance, because I knew that was going to come with him eventually. It's the unfortunate reality. How is he going to bounce back from this? And it's really going to show a lot about the mental strength and toughness of Michael Penix that I think could actually be very high. But how is he able to bounce back? That's going to, I think, be something that I'm going to be looking forward to in the next game versus Washington. But still gotta hold our quarterback accountable, because we did it with Kirk Cousins, we did it with Ritter, we did it with Mariota, we did it with Matt Ryan when we had to. We're gonna hold Michael Penix accountable. He's got to polish up the accuracy. He's got to go through his reads. He's still a rookie, but you got to learn from your mistakes, and you still got to be held accountable, even when your offensive coordinator has scrambled brains. So, got to hold Michael Penix accountable. Next guy we're going to hold accountable is Parker Romo. Peachtree Parker. Week after kicking 5 field goals in Minnesota, it feels like we have our kicker. We get crushed right back to reality. Parker Romo goes out and literally opening drive, a 49-yard field goal, which should be makeable. He pushes wide to the left. And that was literally what set the tone for how bad yesterday was when Parker Romo missed that kick. And, it's just at the end of the day, when you get handed the keys to the kicking position, which is one of the most important positions on your team, you have to make those kicks. When you do not make those kicks, that puts your team in a poor situation. So, as far as Parker Romo goes, if he wants to keep his job, I would probably be willing to bet he's going to get another opportunity this week. But if he wants to keep his job, and he doesn't want to go back to where he was just a couple weeks ago in the unemployment line, he's got to make those kicks. You got to do it, because that can literally swing the momentum of a game as well. And the next person I'm going to hold accountable is Jeff Ulbrich. Because, listen, everyone is getting held accountable. We're holding everybody accountable. That was just the game that the Falcons played yesterday. Now, I do not think that our defense is the reason we lost necessarily. However, At the same time, we still saw a defense that, compared to the one we saw in Minnesota, was a shell of its former self. It had a fall back down to grace for them. We did not see the pressure. We saw some pressure, but we did not see the necessary amount of pressure to get to Bryce Young. We did not see a turnover from Bryce Young. We saw a secondary that played all right, but granted, Bryce Young was not passing the ball a whole lot. We saw this rushing defense that is kind of supposed to be a strength of this team get over 100 yards put on them. So, you got to hold Jeff Ulbrich accountable. And especially for the fact that it really felt like they were not trying to adapt. They let Carolina get into the groove of their game plan that they had developed, which was okay, we're not going to make it complicated for Bryce. It's going to be some quick completions. It's going to be hot reads. It's not going to be challenging him per se. We know the blitz is coming. We know pressure is coming. So the priority is just going to be get the ball out quick. Do not turn the ball over. And that's what the game plan was for Bryce Young. And then let the run game take care of the rest. And I think it was much easier for them to do that after the Panthers had gotten up early. And it was pretty obvious the Falcons weren't doing anything on offense. But even still, your defense has to step up. So Jeff Ulbrich, his defense, they're getting held accountable. And I'm going to be completely honest. I know every week I do game balls, I do game losers. I'm not doing that segment this week because honestly, no one gets a game ball. The whole team, in my opinion, were game losers. No one deserves credit. The only bright spots that I will say that, I'll subtract from most of the blame are two guys. That is Bijan Robinson and, surprisingly enough, D. Alford. D. Alford had a exceptional game filling in for A.J. Terrell. It felt like he was in on a lot of pass breakups. He was being aggressive, and he is adapting well to this new defensive system. So I like to see it. He is proving to be a solid depth piece. And of course, Bijan Robinson, we all know that pretty much whenever he gets the ball in his hands, Bijan you can almost always mark down for a 100-yard game from scrimmage. He had 13 rushes for 72 yards yesterday, and then another 5 receptions for, I believe, 38 yards in the receiving game. So, you always know you can get that out of Bijan. But as far as D. Alford goes, will say he is maybe the one bright spot. I'm not giving out a game ball because that's how much this game pisses me off. But those are some bright spots that I will highlight. I will give their flowers. But everyone else, K.N. Ellis had a sack, but K.N. Ellis was also he missed some key tackles, especially early in the game. He missed that tackle on Bryce Young when you let Bryce run in for the touchdown to go up 7-0. So pretty much everyone else is all a game loser. And I will say it, the entire team is getting held accountable for this game. Now, is this rock bottom? Because it was mentioned yesterday by Raheem Morris that he really felt like the Atlanta Falcons hit rock bottom with this game. I will say that I would hope this was rock bottom. I certainly would. But I don't know if you can really have the confidence to say definitively that this is rock bottom. Will the Falcons play this bad next week? Will they play this bad every week? I don't think so. I truly do not think so, just because it is so hard, I think, to play that bad. I think that you can chop this down to the fact that Carolina did come out, did play this game hard. This was a very important game to them. But at the same time, this was an absolute embarrassment in how the Falcons handled this game. So, I will say this isn't rock bottom if Raheem Morris actually adapts and he learns to start holding people accountable, because it doesn't feel like there's any accountability in that building. I'm not sensing accountability. I'm not sensing urgency. And it feels like as long as you are in a situation with this team that week in, week out, they are going to, you don't know what team you're going to get. And that is the frustrating part about it. That is why you have seen fans start to really give up on the team over the years. It's unfortunate to see. I'll always ride with the team, but you gotta call the BS out. And so far, I've smelled a lot of BS from Raheem Morris. And until he actually takes accountability and he really starts to take those drastic changes in game prep. Another thing also that I felt that I did not mention earlier. The atrociousness of how the Falcons get their play calls in on offense is another thing that you don't even want to get me started on, because Zach Robinson, that is absolutely on him. He needs to get those play calls in, and then that's on Raheem Morris. And if Zach Robinson is having trouble communicating up in that booth, he needs to be down on the field. Why can Zach Robinson not get down on the field? We see Jeff Ulbrich on the field, no problem. Why can Zach Robinson not be on the field? That is the question that you have to ask yourself. So, looking forward to obviously next Sunday, the Atlanta Falcons are back at home, back at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, finally, for the first time since opening day. And it is Dan Quinn's return to Mercedes-Benz Stadium. The Washington Commanders are coming in. It's pretty unclear who their quarterback's going to be, but it's either going to be Shane Daniels or it's going to be the Falcons' former quarterback from a couple years ago, Marcus Mariota. And listen, it is, I think, a game that I have had a lot of confidence in really since the schedule came out. It's a game that I thought we've stood a great chance to actually win despite all the narrative surrounding it. But after a loss like the one in Carolina, it just, I think, makes things so much more uncertain about where this team actually is. Does this team have the talent? Of course, the team has the talent. No one is going to, try to deny that this team doesn't have the talent. But until you have a coach that actually knows how to harvest that talent the right way, how to utilize that talent the right way, how to hold that talent accountable the right way, you will never truly know what to fully think of this team. But could the Falcons win against Washington? Yeah. I mean, we could. The NFL is a very weird league. But at the end of the day, I'm going to end it off on this. You can beat a great team all day, but if you can't beat a team that you know you should beat, then what is it for? What is this? What is playing this up and down carousel for? Especially when you've been doing it for several years now. But anyways, with that being said, um, appreciate everyone for watching. It's always going to be about the Falcons over here, no matter what the result is. Remember to like, remember to subscribe, remember to share it out, and I will see you all in the next one.